Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is of mice and men. And I was writing about an experience I had when I was 9 years old. I was walking home from school on the Upper West Side of New York City, and I was walking to my mom's house, and I was walking past this building where there was a courtyard, and as I was approaching the courtyard, I could hear yelling, screaming, sounded like a bunch of kids, and as I got into the line of view where I could see, I saw a group of kids in a circle. Their backs were to me, and they were yelling as if they were like at a sporting event. And they were yelling, "Get it, get it." And there was a tall kid in the middle, a boy, and he had what looked like a broom handle or a mop handle. And he was lifting it overhead and ramming it down into something in the middle of the circle that I could not see. And I heard underneath all of the screaming some other sound that I couldn't place that sounded like high-pitched chirping or yelping or something that did not sound right. Now, I was a very shy kid, definitely not confrontational. It just was not in my nature, but just something about it didn't seem okay or right. And so I crept closer to what was happening, trying to see what was in the middle of the circle. And as I got closer, I saw like a big white utility bucket, like people, like you would use to mop a big auditorium or something. And whatever he was, ramming this broomstick or mop handle into, obviously there's something in the bucket. So I made my way to the front of the circle because everybody was focused on him and the bucket and whatever was happening. Nobody was really paying attention to me. I got to the front close enough that I could peer over the edge of the bucket, and there was a tiny mouse running in circles, and it was covered in like a white powder. And it was, it had, right as I got there, he had just rammed the mop handle down, and the mouse had just avoided it. And the poor thing is like, all I could see were huge eyes, and you could see the mouse's heart beating like in its whole body. It was just like shaking. And I said, "Stop it. What are you doing?" Before I even knew that I was saying anything. Like I was definitely not, it was not I'm going to do something and then speak. It was just like the words are out, of my mouth. And I didn't even realize I had done it, I don't think, because he froze and stared at me. And so did everyone in the circle. It's just like, and I didn't know these kids. They all were older. He was definitely like a teenager, like 14, 15, much taller. And I was crying instantly. I was just crying. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And, I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm trying to kill it. Like, it was just totally obvious. And I said, why though? And he looked at me. I think it hadn't even occurred to him why, and he kind of like moved from like one foot to the other. And I just was I was like sobbing. And he said, I don't know, it's just a mouse. Do you want it? And I said, yes. And so he picked up the bucket and handed it to me. And I had to the bucket was so big that I couldn't get my arms all the way around it. And at that point, I think when the kids in the circle realized this is what he was going to do, like he was stopping, and they dispersed. Some of them looked embarrassed. He said, sorry. At the same time, I said, thank you. And then I didn't write about this week. I've written about this experience, I think once before, which I linked in the essay because I wrote about it for other reasons. But the powder, when I picked up the bucket, there was a really, like a very intense smell. I said to him, what is this? What is the powder? And he said, it's bleach. As if that, made sense. And I nodded as if that made sense. And I took the mouse. And, I was like talking to it all the way home. I was afraid to just like pick it up for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, it was like in total, like, nervous system overload. So, I didn't know if it would bite me or whatever in that state. And also just like, wasn't sure about the bleach, just the whole thing. I was 9. So I knew my mother was not going to let me keep this mouse. My mom, she was very used to me. I happened to be sitting in there's a window seat in our living room. And I happened to be sitting there one day when a sparrow fell out of the sky, and I ran downstairs and got it. So she was used to me bringing strays home, animals, but she would never let me keep them. So I got home and I didn't know how to clean the bleach. I didn't know what to do, but I knew like wetting it probably wasn't a good idea. So I ended up taking it to the local vet, and they ended up getting the bleach off of it with, I think, what looked like a makeup brush, and then a hair dryer, and then they bathed it, and then they gave it to me, and she would not let me keep it, my mom. And I remember releasing it in Riverside Park, which was probably, in retrospect, not the right thing to do, but I was 9, so hopefully that mouse had a long, happy life. But I was writing about it because of the boy with this mop handle broomstick, and also all the kids around him who were cheering him on, get it. And the fact that as soon as I asked him what he was doing, it was like, like a spell was broken kind of a thing. And I don't, my armchair psychologist, hat, of course I could speculate that probably somebody was being violent with him somewhere in his life. and he saw an opportunity to feel powerful. And maybe he saw this mouse trapped and scared in a bucket, and those feelings of being trapped and scared, he recognized and maybe wanted to like stamp those feelings out in himself. I think often that's what people are doing when they perceive weakness in someone else and they're cruel. Sometimes it's like they're seeing a reflection of something in themselves that they really are not comfortable with. And I'll never know. I'll never know what was going on there. But we've all heard that, hurt people hurt people. Not always. I think it can kind of go one of two ways, because for me, I think I related with that little mouse in the bucket feeling scared and trapped. I knew what that felt like. I've talked about it a lot. And for me, it was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? Why do you want to kill that mouse? The mouse didn't do anything to you. The mouse is not hurting you. Why would you not just let the mouse go in peace? Like the mouse is just defenseless. It can't go anywhere. It can't do anything. Why would you cause it harm like that? I think we tend to go in one of two ways, with abuse. Like I think people either repeat the cycle or they break the cycle and they kind of go in an opposite direction. And forever, for as long as I can remember, I have never understood I just don't understand being cruel when you could be kind. And I know that sounds really Pollyanna, and anyone who knows, I'm not a Pollyanna person, but I am, but with that, I literally do not, it just does not make sense to me on a core level, on a human, just right at the base of my soul. I do not understand if you're in a situation where you could be kind, why you would be cruel, and take pleasure in it. And I know there's groupthink and there's bystander syndrome. There's so many things that can happen. And I definitely wondered so many times after that, when I looked back on that moment, if I hadn't walked by, if he had killed that mouse, what would have happened? Obviously, it would have been a terrible day for the mouse, but I mean, what would have happened to those kids? How would they have felt? I don't think they would have felt good. I don't think he would have felt good. I don't think he would have looked back on that and felt good about it. I don't think the kids cheering him on would have left with a good feeling. I think that would have been one of those memories that kids carry with them and maybe never tell anyone ever, that they just feel this shame about a thing they participated in, that they wish they could go back in time and undo. And there are a million things like this, this isn't me, I just happened to be walking by, whatever. It's just that it was on my mind because that is how I feel, I don't know, about a dozen times a day right now living in this country. I see things that I cannot understand. Why? Why? What is the point of that? How is that helping anyone or making anything better or, on any level? And it hurts. It hurts to watch what is happening here in this country. It hurts to watch. It hurts to watch what's happening to some of my friends, because I feel like some of my friends are turning into the kids around that bucket in that circle, cheering on cruelty for the sake of cruelty that is not going to make anything better for anybody. That's just going to cause harm. Nothing good comes of it. I feel like people are getting sucked into this very painful way of thinking, and it hurts to watch. I have a close friend who I think has gone, no, I don't think, I know, has gone in that direction. And it's heartbreaking. Absolutely mind-boggling and heartbreaking to watch someone that have loved and spent time with and have memories with and used to have so much respect for and trust in and all of that, just go in a direction where you're like, wow, I cannot believe what is happening here. This is so sad. And I never would have called it. I never would have seen this coming. We are in a government shutdown here in the United States. This is day 3. And there are so many things happening that are just wild. I'm at the point now where I really want to try to just explain some things, and I linked, like I always do, I linked everything in the essay. So for anyone who wants to go and fact check, please, I would really love that. I would really like for you to do that. If you were to get on any government website right now, and I've never seen anything like this in my entire life, no matter who is in office. I've never seen an administration. I've never seen anything like this, okay? And I've been on this planet for a while. If you were to get on any government website right now, what you would see is the radical left has shut down the government, because they want $1.5 trillion and transgender for everyone and open borders and, I woke this or whatever. That is, first of all, as far as I can tell, and, I'm not an attorney, but I like a constitutional law nerd. I just love this stuff. I think it's a violation of the Hatch Act and or the Anti-Lobby Act. As far as I can, it's, one or the other, both, because you cannot, those are government websites that are, run with our tax dollars. So they're not supposed to be partisan at all. And it's a lie is the other problem. What is happening, just to be really clear, is we had a budget bill, right? The big, beautiful bill, which now they've tried to rebrand as like the working families tax break bill, which is wild. We had this bill back in July. The president told Republican, he said, I want the budget bill passed by July 4th, which was just arbitrary. I mean, they could have worked on it for months, but he decided that's when he wanted it. And people don't like to pay attention to this stuff. It's not sexy. It's, if you were to go look up the budget bill on the government website, it is long. It is, it's provision after provision out. It's tiny little writing. Nobody's interested, right? What people are interested in is what happens to their life. That's what they're interested in. What happens to the money that they make and their quality of living and what they can afford to do or not do. That's when people start paying attention. When things that they've always been able to do, suddenly they can't anymore, or, the money that they've been making is not going nearly as far as it was. That's when people start to really try to figure out, wait, what changed? What happened? Why is this not working anymore? And that's what's about to happen and is currently happening. But a lot of people like me, for example, I was paying attention back in July to see what was in this bill. And you could go back and look at the essays I was writing in July because I was devastated. Basically, in a nutshell, what is happening right now is the Republican Party is prioritizing two main things in the budget. And I'm giving you main things, okay? Two main things with our money. This is our money, just in case anyone is just unclear on this. The government doesn't have money of their own. The money that runs the government is taxpayer dollars. When we pay our federal taxes and our state taxes, right? That is the money that the government uses to pay for things. So, okay, we all vote. Those of us who vote, I sure hope you vote. Not everyone does. But, you vote, and the idea is I'm voting for people who are aligned with my philosophy about how things should go, what I think my community needs, what I think would be good for my state, for the world at large, whether it's environmental concerns, whether it's, people's rights to love who they want to love, or whatever it is, right? Whatever's important to you, whatever your philosophy is, you're trying to find people who are going to represent how you feel, and you send them to the state capitol and to Washington to work for you, to represent you. That's why we call them representatives. The tax dollars that you pay are going to cover things like infrastructure, like roads and hospitals and public schools and all that stuff locally. And then whatever in Washington, all of our representatives together, right? They go in there and they're like, okay, in my community, in my state, here are some things my people need. And every state does that. Okay, so sometimes we have presidents who are, they're on one side or the other. They're supposed to be, no matter what, representing the whole country. Whether people voted for them or didn't, they're the president of the United States. Not this time, not even pretending. This time we have a president who's Democrats are lunatics, they're crazy, they want transgender for everyone, which no one even knows what that is, what that means. These things don't mean anything. Open borders, they don't care about, Portland is at war. Portland is not at war any more than Los Angeles was at war. These are not real things. They're not true. And people in Portland are posting videos so you can see what is happening in Portland. People are having matchas. That's what's happening. They're going on hikes. They're riding bikes. They're not at war. So, but he just says things. Okay, we'll get back to that. So we have the budget bill. What they decide, Republicans, they're in control. They are the majority. They've got the House, they've got the Senate, they've got the executive branch, and the Supreme Court has given the president immunity. That's important too. They have decided anything he does in his official capacity falls outside. That's outside the law or whatever. He's got leeway to do what he needs to do in his official capacity. We've never had a Supreme Court say that before. It's wild. A lot of wild things going on. Okay, so they're controlling everything. They decide this is what we want to do with the government, with the federal, with the monies that we have here, with this budget. Our priorities are two main things. More tax breaks for the people who need them the least. The richest people are getting the best tax breaks in our country. And they say, well, they're good for the economy. They bring business here. They're spending money here. It's not normal if Jeffrey Bezos is paying less in taxes than I am, or than a teacher is. That makes absolutely no sense. And he would not be where he is without the roads, without the truck drivers, without the people working in the warehouses who are treated horribly. That's an issue, a huge problem. But that's what they say. That's why there are all these tax breaks and loopholes. And believe me, these people know how to work them. So tax breaks for people who need them the least, and border ICE agents. That is what they want money for. In order to find the money to accomplish those goals, they gutted Medicaid. There are cuts to Medicaid in this bill that are staggering, unprecedented. Never, ever have we had an administration make cuts to Medicaid like this. Now, people rely on Medicaid. It is not just your mom, dad, grandma, grandpa relying on Medicaid. There are a lot of people who are, really struggling in this country who rely on Medicaid for their health care. Kids, women who are, pregnant, like a lot of people who are barely getting by who rely on Medicaid. And they have made it a lot harder for people to get their benefits. These are, again, all things that are linked that you can fact check. I think it is it's an insane amount. I want to say, I don't want to say the number because I don't want to get it wrong. It's just a astounding cuts to Medicaid. In addition, we have the Affordable Care Act, thanks to Obama. Nobody in this country, for whatever reason, wants universal health care. We've been trying to get universal health care here for decades. And frankly, I am all in favor of universal health care. I think it should just be a thing that everyone has. Every other developed country, there's universal health care, some form of it. Meaning that's part of what you get when you pay taxes, you get universal health care. Now, people always scream and yell, I don't want it. I want to pick my own doctors. Okay, we could work this out. I guarantee you we could figure it out so that there's universal health care, but you could opt out and you could have your private insurance if that's what you want to do instead. Or your employer could decide, I'm going to offer this insurance. You can also do universal health care if you'd rather. We could figure this out because we're smart. I promise you we could work it out. But that's a conversation people freak out about. You want to know why? Big pharma and all kinds of people making money off of this. That's why if you go and get a procedure done, it's like $30,000. And you're like, wait, what? I'm looking at this bill. They're charging $30,000. My insurance company's paying what? It's like everything is bloated and broken. But that's why when you go to have a conversation about universal health care, it's shut down. Just like when you talk about gun control, it's shut down. It's money. There's a problem in this country, stating the obvious. So Obama's like, all right, we're not going to do universal health care. That's not going to happen, but we're going to do the Affordable Care Act. And basically what that means is there's going to be a marketplace where people can get online and they can see what insurance is available to them in their states. And we are going to give subsidies to the states to offset the insane cost of health insurance. That's what the subsidies are. The Affordable Care Act subsidies are a way to make health insurance affordable for people who would otherwise not be covered. When people are not covered, it drives the cost of health insurance up for everyone, because what ends up happening is people get sick and they go to the ER, and that becomes their way of getting care. And that is not good for anyone. That makes everything worse for everybody. That means the people who are paying for insurance end up subsidizing the people who don't have insurance. For example, I am on the Affordable Care Act, and I linked this as well because I want you to see an actual human being in this situation right now. I want you to see. I took a screenshot from my portal yesterday. I took out like my name and other identifying details because obviously I don't want that all over the internet. But you can actually see this is what my plan would cost right now. My plan, it's like $1,700. I think it's like $1,709.56 or something like that. And then there are basically like $1,400 essentially in subsidies, and I end up paying $346.46 a month. That is what my plan is costing me right now. If the subsidies are set to expire December 31st, if that happens, the plan that I'm on right now would be $1,700 a month. There is no way I can do that. I have a child in college and another one right behind him. And even if I didn't, no one that I know has an extra $1,400 a month lying around, that they're not using, especially when groceries have gone up and all this tariff BS is going on. Like, no one has that extra money there. Just, oh yeah, I'll just pay another $1,400 a month for health insurance. That's not even including copays, prescriptions, and any kind of emergency. That's insane in a developed country. That's absolute madness. And it's embarrassing for our country that that's what's going on. So what is happening right now, literally, is the Democrats are saying, extend the subsidies. Extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies permanently. That's what we're asking for. Because if you don't, there are going to be probably 11 million people kicked off of their insurance. People that just will not be able to afford to have insurance, which will end up in people dying. That's what will happen. I think the projected estimate of how many people a year will die if they do not have health insurance, was like 50 million people a year. You need to be able to go to the doctor if you're not well. It's just a common sense thing. You need to be able to go to the doctor. I had skin cancer a couple years ago. I had Mohs surgery on my shin, and I have to get checked. If something comes up, I'm a very freckly person. If something comes up on my body, I need to go and get it checked. I have a history of breast cancer on my mother's side of the family. My maternal grandmother died of breast cancer. My mother would never get a mammogram. I have dense breast tissue. I have to get ultrasounds. Like, I need that. That's not a game. I'd like to be here. Somebody literally said in a thread, we have such an irrational fear of death in this country. Just eat well and go to hot yoga. Okay, really? First of all, I do a lot of yoga and I eat really well. Secondly, I'd like to be here for my children for as long as I possibly can. It's not an irrational fear of death. It is a rational expectation that if I pay taxes in a developed country, healthcare should be affordable and approachable. That's a reasonable expectation. And I'm just at the point now where people are saying things that are absolutely bonkers and without compassion or common sense. No compassion, no common sense, and just no basis in reality. So that's where we are. And that is what is going on. Democrats have said, look, please just extend the subsidies, make them permanent so that Americans can have affordable health care. And that money that you are spending to give billionaires more tax breaks, put that back into Medicaid. We're not going to have 50 million people a year dying, so Jeffrey Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk can keep not paying taxes. We're not going to do that. That doesn't seem like a good idea. That's what's going on. They're just literally, and also part two, okay, continuing resolutions. That's what they're CRs. You probably keep hearing this thing like, well, Caroline Leavitt, who I don't know how she gets the words out of her mouth. I really don't. But anyway, she's talking about like, well, Democrats just need to sign this clean CR and then the government will open. No. The Democrats did that for them in March. They did. They signed a clean CR in March. What is a continuing resolution? What is this all about? Okay. In our government, the fiscal year begins October 1st. That's how it works. The president takes over in January. If the president and the Congress cannot come up with 12, with the appropriations, annual appropriations for the year, for the budget, for everything, then you're looking at continuing resolutions, which are short-term funding resolutions so that the government can keep doing its work. And you need both parties, even the minority party, to sign off on those. When you cannot even get that done, it is a sign that your democracy is not working. It's not functioning. And this very president said, when there's a government shutdown, it's because the president is weak. And he's not wrong. It is the one thing I agree with him about. It is a failure of the president to be able to get people to work together. Now, what happened in March is Democrats said, okay, we'll sign your the CR for you. We'll keep the government open and we'll work together on this budget bill, which not a single Democrat, this big, beautiful bill, Democrats were calling it the big, ugly bill because they knew how many people were going to be without health insurance, without SNAP benefits that they count on, without money to buy baby formula. They knew what was going to happen. Even there were people 3 Republicans did not sign the bill. So no Democrat signed it. 3 Republicans did not sign it. J.D. Vance had to break the tie in order to get this bill through, which is what happened. The idea, of course, was like, we're going to keep negotiating here until we get something, that feels better than this. Well, they're not negotiating. They've had time. They knew this was coming. They knew December 31st was coming and the subsidies were going to run out. They knew that. And Democrats have been asking, let's meet, let's talk about this, let's try to work on this so that we don't get into a situation where it's October and we don't have any plan here. We cannot leave Americans with no affordable health care. We're not going to do that. And they would not meet. They would not meet. They kept canceling and not meeting and not discussing and not working out a plan for this eventuality. It was not a lack of trying. The president himself canceled meetings with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. They were trying to meet with him as well. He canceled on them and did not meet with them until Monday, which was the day before the government shutdown, the day before this was all, the money was running out and there was no agreement met. That's when he met with them, the day before. Mike Johnson sent all the Republicans home. We're not going to vote. Just go home. Just forget it. The week before all of this was happening, sent everybody home. So why do you think this is happening? Why do you think the Speaker of the House is sending Republicans home and there is no good faith negotiation? Even after Democrats signed a clean CR once, they've already done this game once, they did it. They gave them what they asked for. They gave them the money to continue running the government. What happened after March, after they signed this thing, we've all been around, right? You know what happened, hopefully, if you're paying attention. A lot of things happened. An unelected billionaire was allowed to go into the Treasury with 6 dudes in their, late teens and early 20s with flash drives and take everyone's social security numbers and highly sensitive financial information. They started shutting down government agencies, firing federal workers, all this conversation about, well, we're going to fire federal. You've already been firing massive numbers of federal workers. This is not new. This is not something you're just going to do now. You've already been doing it. USAID, you all know about this. Like, they just started to impound funds. So Congress controls the purse strings. I'm going to go back now for a second. That is according to the Constitution. The Constitution says, because this money is coming from everyone in the country, from everyone's tax dollars, regardless of party, everyone pays taxes, including, by the way, undocumented immigrants. Oh, yeah, they do too. They don't get any, any benefits. They are not eligible, by the way. That's another lie that's being spread. They're not eligible for health care. They are eligible for emergency services. If they show up to the ER and they're bleeding from the head, yes, they're going to be seen. Just like if I was in France or Mexico and I was bleeding from the head, yes, I would be seen in the ER. Would you not want me to be seen? I mean, what is happening, people? What is happening to your conscience, to your morals, to your ethics? These are human beings. So yes, if they go to an ER, whether they're undocumented or not, a human being shows up in the ER, yes, they will be seen. Short of that, no, they are not eligible for Medicaid, Medicare, Affordable Care Act. You know why? No Social Security number. No Social Security number, no benefits. It's not happening, and Democrats are not trying to change that. That's not true. It's not what's going on. States can decide if they want to use some of their state budget to make different choices for undocumented immigrants. If the state wants to do that with their state budget, that's on them. But the federal government and federal health care is not available to undocumented immigrants. And you should check that. It is linked, again, in the essay. That is a BS story that is being told to you. What Democrats are fighting for right now is affordable health care for all Americans, including Republicans, probably your parents, and maybe your mama. Like, I'm going to guess there are probably Republicans who really need these benefits. And I'm not guessing because I know. The Republican states, the red states, it's so sad that we have red states and blue states and this I can't even believe what's happening. Purple states, red states are going to be hit the hardest by these cuts. The hardest. So Democrats are there taking abuse, trying to get benefits for people who are telling them to go F themselves. Like, that's what's going on right now, It's just, I can't, sometimes I'm like, anyway, I put, as I said, a picture, a screenshot from my own portal in the essay so you can actually see what is happening and how bad it is if these subsidies go away. That's what's going on right now. And it is the only leverage that Democrats have to try to get affordable health care for all Americans is this. Now, the last time they signed a continuing resolution in good faith and said, okay, we're going to sign this. We're going to fund the government. We're going to, join in here and let you, hope that we can work together and compromise. And, that's what they're supposed to be doing. That was not done. That has not happened because why would they? The president shows Democrat leadership zero respect. So why would Republican senators and representatives show their colleagues any respect? From the top down, he's telling them, you don't have to respect these people. They're crazy. They're lunatics. We're at war with them. I hate them. Why would they then go into work and work with their colleagues the way they're supposed to? It's coming from inside the House, the White House. It's coming from inside the House. He is telling them, you're going to do what I tell you to do. You know, and there are very occasionally some Republican senators who are like, I don't like this. And then they're shut down. They're threatened. You know, there's also a, I mean, there are so many things happening that I barely know how to get it all out. Finally, on Monday, the president does meet with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, you know, and I'm sure they went in there like hoping. I know Chuck Schumer was trying to avoid a shutdown. I don't think he's the right person for this moment, but you know, I'm glad that they're staying strong because this is the only hope we have right now of getting affordable health care for Americans. This is it. They leave that meeting and the president of the United States posts a deep fake, right, AI generated video of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and they put Hakeem Jeffries in a sombrero with a mustache, and they have Chuck Schumer saying the most despicable, awful things about Democrats and undocumented immigrants and Black people. And I mean, it was the most racist, vile. I mean, honestly, like I keep thinking I can't be shocked anymore. And then I'm like, oh no, I still can be. It was horrifying. And he shared that on his social media platforms. And it is so demeaning to the office of the presidency. You know, I know he thinks he's demeaning Democrats. He's demeaning the country. Like, that's the part that I don't think his supporters are maybe getting. On the world stage, this is terrible. Our kids are watching this. Our children are watching the president of the United States post horribly racist, vile crap. And I don't know how anyone honestly can look themselves in the mirror anymore and keep supporting this. I do not understand. And the vice president says, oh, it's all in good fun. He's just joking. We can negotiate in good faith and joke. They're not negotiating in good faith. What they're doing now is they're saying, okay, well, if you won't sign this clean CR. There's a clean CR and a modified CR. So a clean CR is just give us the money. Give us the money to keep the government open and to keep doing what we want to do. We're going to keep impounding funds. Impounding funds means Congress together, all the colleagues together, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, they have committees, they have lunches, they have phone calls, they have, Zooms, they have all the things, right? They're talking to each other on the floor. They're making deals. That's what they do. They go to Washington and say, my people want this, your people want that. Let's scratch each other's backs. I'll give you a little bit of what you want. You give me a little bit of what I want. This is how it works. Nobody gets everything they want. Everybody gets something they want. That's how it's supposed to work. So all those deals that were made before this administration took over went out the window. Democrats signed the CR in March, and all those things they had agreed upon, president's like, yeah, I don't like those anymore. Get rid of them. Waste, fraud, and abuse, don't like it. DEI, don't like it. Get rid of it. Cancel that. Take that money back. Don't use it for that. Take that. And the Republicans are like, okay, yes, sir. Up yours, Democrats. We're not doing that anymore. That's what happened, folks. Like it or not, that's what happened. Money that they had agreed to spend in a certain way together. President said, DEI, don't like it. Nope, not doing that anymore. And they just said, okay, it's unconstitutional. Constitution's not, no one's paying attention to that. No one's saying, wait a second, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution. That supersedes any loyalty I have to one man. Nope. Every Republican senator has broken their oath to the American people. Absolutely. Their allegiance is to this man and not the Constitution. That's where it's at. We're in a constitutional crisis. We've been here for months. That's where it's at. So that's what happened. And now they're asking for another one. They want another clean CR. A modified CR is, all right, we'll sign it, but we want some modifications. We want some things before we sign this thing and give you more money. We want, for example, those ACA subsidies, and we want them to be permanent. We want to make sure Americans have affordable health care. We want, some amount of that Medicaid money that you took in your budget. We want that back so people don't lose their health care benefits. I don't know if you saw what happened in Chicago with this latest ICE raid, rappelling from helicopters. Do you know the amount of money that they spent, and they filmed it like it's some kind of action movie? That's taxpayer money being used to film that, to fly a helicopter overhead and have these guys rappelling down, breaking doors. You know the amount of destruction they caused? They put children in U-Haul trucks and budget trucks zip tied together. They took them away from their mothers. American citizens too, FYI, if you only care about American citizens. I don't think the people who listen to me only care about American citizens, but just in case. No warrants, no due process. They destroyed people's apartments, the whole building. Nobody was allowed to get a lawyer, nothing. Forget due process, forget equal protection under the law. That's not even happening. That's how your taxpayer dollars are being spent right now. And what is happening with this government shutdown is Democrats saying, I don't want my tax dollars spent like that. I would like to have affordable health care, thanks. And I would like people to be treated with some respect and compassion. I do not want children zip tied together, thrown into the back of a U-Haul. I'm not down for any of that. I don't want my friends in Portland to be terrorized by our own troops for no reason. I don't want my tax dollars spent that way. I'm here in Los Angeles. I saw when the National Guard was in downtown LA. I was there. I went multiple times. There was zero reason for that. The National Guard, they were bored. They had nothing to do. It was a 6-block radius where protests were happening. There was nothing for them to do. The LAPD had it handled. There was zero for them to do. The protests were absolutely peaceful and wonderful. There were a couple things that happened after hours that the LAPD handled. It was an absolute egregious waste of taxpayer dollars, and it's going on and on and on. Chicago, Portland. This man is just invading cities run by Democrats he doesn't like, or states run by Democrats he doesn't like. And now that's what's happening. He's like, well, if you Democrats won't sign this clean CR, just give us the money that we want, then I'm going to withhold $18 million that was promised to New York City for a train. They're not going to get that anymore. Blackmail. It's just total blackmail. While they're messaging, it's the Democrats, the Democrats caused the shutdown, the Democrats, it's because he thinks his supporters are that blind, that either dumb, that they can't realize, okay, wait, the Republicans are controlling the House, the Senate, the executive branch, and the Supreme Court is in their pocket. But it's the Democrats' fault? Really? I think there has to come a moment where his supporters are yeah, dude, no. The Epstein files, right? We have a newly elected representative. Mike Johnson won't swear her in Arizona. She's taking over for her dad, who died in March. He won't swear her in because she's the 218th signature that would make them have to release the Epstein files. He's like, no, everybody go home. Go home. We're not doing anything. Just go. He's sworn in other representatives pro forma. That's happened twice before, no problem, but not this time. It's just the level of corruption and lying to your face is so thick. You'd have to be blind not to see it, honestly. And I actually have more faith in his supporters than he does. That's where I'm at this point. I have more faith in the people who voted for this man than the man has in them. I think they're smarter than this. I do not think they're going to look at this situation, I'm sure some of them will, but I don't think all of them will. I think they're smarter than that. So I don't know. But that's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. That's what the shutdown is about. And aside from that, which was kind of a main thing I wanted to get across in case anybody was confused about what's actually happening here and the horror of these ICE raids, which are getting less and less, I don't know. I really, we went from a man saying, I'm going to go after the worst of the worst, the criminals, whatever, to like grandmas and people who are like day laborers who want to work in your backyard. They'll just tell you, oh, they're part of a gang, no proof, no evidence. Like they're just doing things, right? And hurting children, traumatizing children. This man was saying, I don't know anything about Project 2025 until this week. And then he's like, oh, Russell Vogt, he wrote 2025. He was one of the authors. Now he's admitting like, yeah, I like 2020. Yeah, I like Project 2025. It's like, he's got him now in this video as the Grim Reaper. He's coming for you. Like, it's just, what are you doing, people? Like, what are you doing? Is this really what you want? Because if it is, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, like, if that's what you wanted, is this absolute cruelty? There are just too many of us who are like, absolutely not. I'm not going to watch that. And there are just too many of us who are like, this is not the world that we want to live in or the country that we want to live in. It's not about open borders and, oh, I want crime everywhere. Come on, cut it out already. Stop. Like, deprogram yourself, come back here. Like, just stop with this madness, because it really is. It's not cool. Like, just I don't know what to say anymore, but you got to know better than this. This is not how we treat human beings. This is not it. People who are, harming other people, yeah, they absolutely need to be taken out of society where they can't hurt people anymore. I agree. What happened to the woman on the train in North Carolina, absolutely horrible, heartbreaking, all of that. We can agree on a lot of things, but what is happening in our country is absolutely outrageous and disgusting. And there are too many people who are not going to just sit by and watch this. These men, quote unquote, that y'all have decided you wanted to put in office, they are the boys with the broomsticks and the mop handles who kill the mouse. This is what it looks like when nobody intervenes and they grow up and they're angry and vindictive and weak, and they want to take those feelings out on people who are vulnerable. They take pleasure in it, but it's never enough. It doesn't last. These people are like, they don't care about the environment. They're undoing all these environmental protections. They don't care about clean water. It's like, none of this is going to be good for anyone. And it's time to wake up and come back now and understand, oops, Stephen Miller, not a good guy. A president who is demeaning us on the world stage and posting videos, racist, awful videos, not the right person. You know, JD Vance, who's like saying, it's not racist. It's just a joke. Don't you know who those people are? The people who say something horribly racist and sexist and they say, I was just kidding. Those are not people you want to put in power. Pete Hegseth, that embarrassing display this week in front of our most, our military from all over. First of all, he put them in danger, putting them all in the same room and telling everybody the time and date they were going to be there. This man is not qualified to be lecturing them on male excellence, insulting every woman, queer person, transgender person who's ever served in our military and put their lives on the line. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's so below the level of, we're being laughed at on the world stage. We're being laughed at. And this whole administration, they're making us all incredibly unsafe. I mean, it looks like a game show over here. I want you to know, it looks like what it is. It looks like what it is. It looks like a bunch of frat boys, angry frat boys, racist, angry, frat boys running the government, led by a man who doesn't care about anyone but himself. Meanwhile, just lining their pockets. It's never going to be enough for them. I want you to understand. People like this, they're bullies, and you cannot back down. You can't back down. They will ram that broomstick into the mouth till it's bleeding, and they'll laugh, and then they'll move on to the next bucket, and the buckets will get bigger, and it never ends. So we're in a mess now, but we're just going to have to rise up and we're going to have to start organizing. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot is I think we need to really think about our communities and things like community gardens. Like, how do you feed your neighborhood? If you're good at gardening, maybe you and other people in your neighborhood who are good at gardening, maybe there's a way you can organize together and figure out, like, how are we going to feed our communities? The people that are going to really struggle with grocery costs for the next few years. It's going to be really bad. It's already really bad, but it's going to get worse. I don't know, like doctors, maybe now's a good time for doctors to get together and try to figure out, is there a clinic? Could we open a clinic? Could we possibly volunteer some of our time for people who are going to be uninsured if these people don't extend the subsidies, which I think they will, because I think they'll have to at a certain point, I don't know. But I think we need to start thinking like that. I think we need to be getting on school boards, because did you see that he sent out all these letters with a compact for universities, Dartmouth, USC, whatever. If you want early access to funds from the government, sign our compact, about like being pro-conservative, whatever. We need to be on every school board. We need to be thinking much more strategically and much more grassroots than we have been, pithy memes and t-shirts are not going to get the job done. We need to be on the ground in our kids' schools, making sure books are not getting banned, and this kind of ideology is not seeping in. We need to be speaking out, at the city level, at the state level. Like, we just need to be a lot more strategic about what we're doing, and a lot more community oriented, figuring out what people need and what you're good at. Nobody's good at everything, but everybody's good at something. You might be really good at organizing. You might be really good at like figuring things out, but not, necessarily executing them. But like, oh, I could get on the phone. I could try to find doctors in my neighborhood and, go into the office, just ask, hey, if I could figure out a way, like, would you be open to volunteering some time in January if we don't have these subsidies extended? Is that something you'd even be open to? Is that a conversation that you would be willing to have? Maybe your own doctor. Maybe you feel comfortable asking your doctor about that. Like, just start thinking about, what am I good at? What could I do? And then start doing it. Like, don't wait, because it's now, right now. Like, now. Anything that you are good at, now's the moment to start thinking about your community and how you can help. Also, like neighborhood watches, like a way to let your neighborhood know if suddenly Budget vans and U-Hauls are pulling up. I don't know if U-Haul and Budget knew what was going on in Chicago the other night, or if they just were like anonymously rented. So I don't want to like throw them under the proverbial bus just yet. Maybe they did not know who was renting them. I don't know. But if they did, and they willingly participated in a raid where children ended up zip tied in the back of their vehicles, I don't ever want to use them again. And I think we should make our voices loud. So I think it's a combination of boycotts when companies are, participating in this kind of heinous, just absolutely horrifying activity, and organizing, getting busy, trying to help people. And the last thing I'll say is, occasionally, not too often anymore, but once in a while, somebody will say to me, why do you talk about politics like so much? Like sometimes it'll happen like on a yoga page, somebody will ask me that. For those of you who know me from that world, from from yoga, I have to just say to you, okay, there's what's happening on your mat, right? Where you quiet your mind and you calm your nervous system and you become present. Then there's a whole philosophical part of the yoga practice that has to do with non-harming, compassion, non-hoarding. I mean, this is like, I wrote a whole book about it. You could read it. So yeah, it's not just what's happening on your mat, and it's not just for you to have a calm nervous system, right? It's also like what's happening around you, trying to face reality as it is. Certainly trying to be the change that you want to see. If you see that someone is suffering, to try to help. That is the idea, And if you've been practicing for a long time and that's not coming through, something's going wrong in your practice. Like, something's going wrong. Politics is just your philosophy in action. It's how you think the world should be. That's what you're voting on when you vote. You're saying, this is how I think things should be. This is how I want people to be treated. This is what I want for the planet. Like, this is how I want, my money to be spent. I'm paying taxes. This is how I want my tax money to be spent. Now, are you going to get everything you want? No. No. But you're trying to at least do your best to find people who are as closely aligned to what it is that you want, what your vision is, as you can. If you cannot find those people, maybe you need to be those people, But yeah, this is not a moment in time, in my opinion, where I could look myself in the face if I were quiet. So many people are suffering right now. So many people are suffering. And, the person I was talking about, that friend of mine who has just, he was saying things to me like, don't get so bogged down, just look at your own life. Just pay attention to your own life. yeah, I could do that. I could just be like, okay, I'm just going to pay attention to my own life. I'm going to use all of that practice I've been doing for all these years on focal points, right? Drishtis, and I'm just going to focus on my life. Well, even if I did that, which is disgusting, even if I did that, how am I affording health insurance in January? What do I do about the fact that I have a daughter in this mess and a son, and I don't trust the people in power? My son, what if there's, I don't know, what if there's a draft? I have an 18-year-old son. I have a 16-year-old daughter. They're trying to look at birth control as possible. Okay, I'm not going to start going in that direction, but I'm not ever going to be that person. I'm always going to be the person who is walking by a building and hearing, whatever, and going to see what's happening, and feeling devastated if something like a mouse in a bucket is what's going on. I'm never not going to care. And for those of you, just in case, I don't think there are too many people who listen to my stuff or read my stuff or, whatever, who would feel this way. But just in case there's anybody, who's like on the fence or something, you want people like me in this world, okay? You want people who think the way that I do in this world, because we're the people who show up when you can't get to the grocery store anymore because something's gone wrong. Or, I don't know, we're the people who are going to cry with you if your dog dies. You don't want to take a broomstick and beat the crap out of all of us. It's not going to be a good world for you if we all go away. If we all move away, you're not going to be left with anything real good around here. So I don't know, maybe just consider that. All right, I'm sending y'all a lot of love. I know it's real tough right now if you are like-minded, and you know where to find me if you need a little support. Until next time, hang in there. All right. I still believe in us. I really do.